What if the reason you keep ending up in the same place isn't because you need more discipline? What if it isn't because you're lazy or inconsistent or afraid? What if the real reason is that a part of you is getting exactly what it wants? I know it sounds ridiculous because if you're listening to this, there's probably something in your life that you'd like to change. I mean, all of us, I think, have something that we'd like to change: a relationship, a habit, a pattern, a dream you've been circling for years. And maybe you've asked yourself, why do I keep doing this? Why do I keep ending up here? Why do I know better and still repeat the same things? So, I read a book recently that asked a question I haven't been able to stop thinking about. The question was, what am I gaining from staying the same? Not what am I losing? What am I gaining? That question, it stopped me cold because I thought I knew the answer. And then I realized I had never really asked myself the question before. Hello, my friend. Welcome back to Lo's Couch. I'm Lo, and this is the space where we stop performing okayness and start actually talking. If you're new here, I am so glad you found this. Grab something warm, get comfortable, and come sit on the couch with us. So today's episode is a little different. I read a book and I can't stop thinking about it. And when that happens, the only thing I know how to do is bring it here. So today we're talking about Magnetic by Rochelle Fox. But before we go any further, I need to be transparent. I am not a neutral reviewer. I am currently training inside Rochelle's certification program to become a meditation and nervous system regulation teacher with Rochelle herself. So, if you told me a few years ago that this would be the path I'd be on, I probably would have laughed at you. But life has a way of leading us exactly where we need to go. So, what you're getting today isn't really a book review. It's a conversation about the ideas in this book and why they matter, about what they've changed for me, and about why I think so many women are carrying stories they don't even realize are running their lives. So, let's get into it. The book is called Magnetic, and the central idea is simple. You are already magnetic, not someday, not after healing, not after becoming more confident, not after achieving the thing, but right now, wherever you are right now, you are magnetic. You are already attracting things into your life, but also pushing things away. The question is whether what you're magnetizing is actually what you want. And that's what when I read, I had to stop because most of us spend our lives trying to change our circumstances. We change jobs, relationships, cities, goals, routines. We convince ourselves that once we get there, then we will feel different. Then we will feel worthy. Then we will feel secure. Then we will finally become the person we've been trying to be. But what if the thing creating your results isn't outside of you? What if it's underneath everything? One of the core ideas Rochelle explores is that so much of our behavior is being driven by subconscious programming rather than our conscious choice. And her thesis is this: you don't achieve what you consciously want, you align with what you subconsciously believe. So I'm going to say it one more time. You don't achieve what you consciously want, you align with what you subconsciously believe. Let that sit for a second. Because if that's true, then all the strategy in the world can only take you as far as your deepest beliefs will allow. If part of you believes you're not safe, not worthy, not capable, not allowed, that story will quietly shape everything. The opportunities you pursue, the relationships you choose, the risks you take, the boundaries you set, the dreams you let yourself have. And I think that's why this book landed so deeply for me because I have seen this play out over and over again in my own life, in coaching, in conversations with women who are smart enough, capable enough, ready enough, and still stuck. not because they don't want more, but because a deeper part of them doesn't yet believe that they get to have it. You get to have it. So, before we go any further, I want to tell you a little bit about Rochelle because context matters. She didn't write this book from a place of ease. She came through PTSD, anxiety, depression, and eating disorder. And what I really appreciate is that she doesn't tell that story in a way that feels polished or performative in any way. It feels very human, it's messy, it's real. The kind of story that says, I didn't heal because life suddenly got easier. I healed because I had to stop abandoning myself. And I think that's a really important distinction because so often we think healing is something that happens to us. Like one day we wake up and suddenly we're okay, like time heals all wounds. But what Rochelle describes is a decision, a commitment she made, a willingness to look inward, to examine the patterns, to sit with her discomfort, to question the stories, and then to slowly begin building something different. What she chose was the work, the subconscious work, the meditation, the nervous system regulation, the slow, often unglamorous process of rewiring patterns that no longer served her. And that's what eventually became Mindspo, which is her meditation and regulation app, which you should definitely check out. And that's what eventually became this book. And because this matters to me, because I'm currently inside the certification, I care deeply about whether someone teaches from lived experience or not. And Rochelle does live that lived experience, and you can feel it on every page. And if you are lucky enough to ever meet with her or if you can listen to her podcast, it just comes all out of Rochelle. This book doesn't read like someone trying to impress you. It reads like someone reaching back and saying, hey, I have been there too. Let me show you what helped. And there's something incredibly, incredibly powerful about that. So there's a chapter called Your Magnetic Story. And this is where the book stopped being interesting and started being really personal. Rochelle says we all have a story, not the one we tell at dinner parties, not the polished version, the deeper one, the unconscious one, the one that got written before we were old enough to question it. Maybe it came from your family, maybe school, maybe religion, could be a relationship, maybe one moment that hurt more than anyone realized. And then something happens. We stop questioning the story and we start living from it. Here's the part that hit me hardest. The subconscious mind often chooses familiar pain over unfamiliar possibility because familiar feels safe, even when it hurts. Pause for a second because that's huge. Think about the pattern you've been trying to change, the relationship, the boundary, the habit, the dream, the thing you've been carrying around wondering why it won't shift. Now ask yourself again, what am I gaining from staying the same? Maybe you're gaining certainty. Maybe you're gaining control. Maybe you're avoiding disappointment. Maybe you're avoiding being seen. Maybe you're avoiding finding out what happens if you actually try. And sit with that for a second. Because most of us spend our lives asking what change will cost us. Very few of us ask what staying the same is costing us. And that question, oh my gosh, it wrecked me because every pattern has a payoff. Every single one, even the ones we say we hate. And here's where it became even more personal. For me, my story, as you know, is being the woman who holds everything together, strong, capable, fine. And for years, I would have told you that was one of my greatest strengths because it looked like a strength. People trusted me, people leaned on me, people came to me when they needed support. I was dependable, I was reliable, the one who could handle it, the one who could figure it out for you, the one who would carry a lot without complaining. And maybe some of you listening know exactly what I'm talking about because women like us get rewarded for that story. People will call us strong, independent, resilient, and those things aren't bad at all. But eventually, I did start asking myself a different question. At what cost? Because every story gives us something. And every story also takes something. My story gave me competence. It gave me control. It gave me certainty, but it also took intimacy. It took vulnerability. It took the ability to receive. Because if your identity is built around being the strong one, who are you when you're struggling? If your identity is built around holding everything together, what happens when you're the one who needs support? And I think that's why that chapter stayed with me because there was a season of my life where holding everything together didn't feel like a personality trait. It honestly was a requirement. So when my youngest son was 10 weeks old, my brother passed away. And at the time, my oldest was 2.5. And if you've ever had a 10-week-old baby, you know that season is already so demanding. My youngest was a terrible sleeper. He was waking every 2 hours. I was beyond exhausted, running on very little sleep, trying to meet the needs of a newborn while also showing up for a toddler who still needed his mummy. And then grief arrived, the kind of grief that changes the whole shape of your life. People would ask me how I was doing. Every time my answer was the same: I'm fine. Not because I was fine, but because I didn't know what else to say. There didn't feel like there was room for me to fall apart. There didn't feel like there was room for me to grieve. There were bottles to make, there were diapers to change, laundry was piling up, another sleepless night waiting for me. My emotions, they weren't getting my attention. So I was sort of telling the truth. I was fine. I wasn't crying. I wasn't in a pit of despair. Everyone else's needs were getting my attention. So I was fine. Or at least that's the story I told myself. And here's what I realized looking back: the season ended, but that story stayed. And I didn't even realize it had stayed. I thought I was just being responsible. I thought I was just being strong. I thought I was doing what any mother would do in that situation. And it took a couple of years before I realized that what helped me survive that season had quietly become part of how I moved through this world. Because that's what survival strategies do. They don't always leave when the emergency is over. Sometimes they become identities. You become the woman who keeps going, the woman who handles it, the woman who doesn't need anything, the woman who's fine. And eventually you stop asking whether that story is still serving you. You just keep carrying it. That's what stories do. They stop feeling like stories. They start feeling like facts. And that's the work. Not hating your story, not shaming your story, but understanding your story, thanking it for what it tried to do, and then deciding whether it still belongs. Because the goal isn't to become someone new. The goal is to stop letting an old story make decisions for the woman that you have become. And maybe that's what healing really is: not becoming someone different, but remembering who you were before the story convinced you otherwise. One of the things I see most often in coaching is that people don't recognize their story because they've with it for so long. It's like a fish trying to describe water. You stop noticing it. You think it's reality, but it's a lens that says people leave. I have to earn rest. My needs are too much. Money is hard. Success changes people. I have to prove my worth. I can't trust myself. Maybe your story sounds like: if I slow down, everything falls apart. If I ask for help, then I'm a burden. If people really knew me, they wouldn't stay. If I stop performing, I won't be loved. And if one of those made your chest tighten a little, pay attention to that, not with judgment, just with curiosity. Come back to it later if you need to. Journal about it. Talk about it with someone you trust, not because every uncomfortable thought is true, but because discomfort is often pointing towards something that wants your attention. Because your story isn't evidence, it's information. And information can be questioned. And once you start looking for these stories, you see them everywhere: in your decisions, in your relationships, in business, in the way you speak to yourself. Not because you're broken, but because you're human. And because at some point your brain learned something and decided it was important. The problem is that protection and growth rarely live in the same place. The things that kept us safe often become the things that keep us small. And that's why awareness matters, because you can't change a pattern you can't see. The book includes free writing prompts, things like, I am the kind of person who dot dot dot. Money is dot dot dot. Love always dot dot dot. When I was little dot dot dot. And I frickin' love these. But I also want to add one of my own, Rochelle, so I hope you don't mind. One that's specific to what we talk about on this couch. Finish this sentence. I stopped speaking up because. That's it. Don't edit it. Don't make it sound healed. Don't make it sound wise. Don't make it sound like something you post on Instagram. Just tell the truth. I stopped speaking up because people leave when I say too much. I stopped speaking up because my feelings were always wrong. I stopped speaking up because people thought I was weird. I stopped speaking up because strong women don't need things. Or I stopped speaking up because I didn't think what I had to say mattered. Whatever yours is, your next job is to notice it. And you don't have to fix it today. You don't have to rewrite it this afternoon. Just awareness comes first. And here's something I wish someone had told me years ago. Awareness is not failure. Sometimes we discover a pattern and immediately start judging ourselves for it. How did I not see this sooner? Why am I still doing this? Shouldn't I be past this by now? No, awareness is progress. The moment you notice a pattern, you've already interrupted it. The moment you become conscious of a story, you are no longer completely controlled by it. You have a choice. Maybe not a perfect choice, maybe not an easy choice, but a choice nonetheless. And that is what matters. Because change doesn't start when you have everything figured out. Change starts when you become willing to tell the truth. And this is the thing I want you to remember. You are not your story. You are not your programming. You are not the thing that happened to you. You are the person who gets to decide what happens next. The story may explain you, but it does not define you. So, do I recommend Magnetic? Completely, obviously. Not because it gives easy answers, but because it asks better questions. Questions that will stay with you, questions that make you pay attention, questions that invite you to become curious about yourself instead of critical of yourself. And I think we spend enough time criticizing ourselves. I think we spend enough time trying to fix ourselves. What I loved about this book is that it invited me to get curious instead. So if today's conversation resonated with you, I want you to do one thing. Take 5 minutes, open a notebook, finish the sentence. I stopped speaking up because. Doesn't even have to be a notebook, could be the notebook on your phone, and see what comes out. You might be surprised by the story waiting underneath, and you might discover that the thing you've been trying to change isn't the real issue at all. The story underneath it is. If you've ever looked at your life and thought, I know what I want, so why do I keep getting in my own way? Then I think you'll get a lot out of this book. I'll link it in the show notes. And if you're interested in doing this work more deeply or you're curious about coaching, you'll find those details there too. Thank you for sitting with me today. Whatever story you've been carrying, you don't have to carry it forever. Before you go, if nobody has told you this lately, I see you. You're not too much. You're not failing. You're paying attention and you are deeply loved. I'll see you next week on the couch.